All right. One more story on the night. We sit here as we do this segment October 6th. Tomorrow is the 1 year anniversary of October 7th. And we wanted to highlight this op ed in The Guardian by a Palestinian living in the United States, Arwa Madawi. As a Palestinian living in the U.S., I've lost friends, job opportunities, and my faith in humanity, by Arwa Madawi. We're going to read this whole op ed. It's not very long, but it is quite powerful. It has been a year of heartbreak, a year of horror, a year of hell. I know I am not alone when I say this has been the very worst year of my life. I have lost friends, I have lost job opportunities, and most of all, I have lost my faith in humanity. But before I get into that, let me fulfill my duty as a good diaspora Palestinian and recite the obligatory incantation, I condemn Hamas, I condemn Hamas, I condemn Hamas. We Palestinians, you see, are not allowed to open our mouths without someone demanding we denounce violence and condemn Hamas. And then we are told to shut our mouths, to stay silent, while the very same people demanding we decry violence salivate over our deaths and celebrate murder on an unimaginable scale. Anyone an Israeli kills is an act of self-defense. Anyone an Arab kills is an act of terrorism. These are the rules we all must abide by. The U.S. have never been shy about how much it hates Arabs. But ever since 7th October, that hatred has shot to such disturbing new levels that I no longer feel at home in this country. Were it not for the fact that I have built a life and a family here, I would get the hell out. Why would I want to stay in a country where Palestinians are so dehumanized that elected officials such as Senator Lindsey Graham can fantasize about dropping an atomic bomb on Gaza, a place where half of the population are children, without facing any meaningful censure? Where John Fetterman, who is my senator, openly mocks pro-Palestinian protesters and seems to take immense joy in our pain. And then there's the fact that simply by paying my taxes, I am complicit in the slaughter and starvation of my own people. Increasingly, I can't rationalize living in a country where such a large portion of my taxpayer dollars is spent on funding war and what Kamala Harris has gleefully described as the most lethal fighting force in the world. I live in Philadelphia, where the schools are so underfunded that just 4 out of more than 200 schools have full-time librarians, and 98% of school buildings' drinking outlets have tested positive for lead. There is no money for schools in the U.S. There is plenty of money to help bomb schools in Gaza. Again, the U.S. has never been shy about how much it hates Arabs, and Palestinians in particular. Well before October 7th, I was subject to plenty of racism on that front. I've had innumerable people tell me that I can't possibly be Palestinian because Palestinians don't exist. Still, even though I thought I was numb to how dehumanized we are, the bloodlust has shocked me. At the time of the Hamas attack, I was taking a break from my Guardian column to work on a corporate copywriting gig with a large ad agency. The internal Slack channel for the agency immediately filled with people cheering on the bombing of Gaza. I was in too much of a state of shock to say anything to the agency's leadership, and if I'm honest, I was too cowardly. It's hard to make a living as a freelance writer, and I normally depend on a few corporate gigs a year. I didn't want to lose future opportunities by speaking up, so I kept my mouth shut, my head down, and waited for the bombing to stop. But of course, the bombing hasn't stopped. 10,000 dead Palestinians, 20,000 dead Palestinians, 30,000 dead Palestinians, 40,000 dead Palestinians. There doesn't seem to be any number of dead Palestinians that will satisfy Israel or that will make politicians in the U.S. finally say, enough. For a while, I was delusional enough to think the ascent of Harris might mark a change for the better, but the vice president has refused to shift on Joe Biden's unconditional weapons policy. She has refused to acknowledge international law. When she was crowned the Democratic nominee in August, the party leadership refused to put a Palestinian American on the main stage for even a minute. That's how little the Democrats think of us. As the death toll mounts, as the humanitarian situation in Gaza and now Lebanon grows increasingly desperate, Politicians across both sides of the aisle in the U.S. keep telling Palestinians that our suffering is all our own fault. Let's remember where all this started. October 7th. Harris repeated this line during her debate with Donald Trump. Tim Walz repeated this line in his debate with J.D. Vance. But that line is a lie. History did not start on October 7th, 2023. While that date may mark a tragedy for Israel, every single day for the last 76 years has marked some sort of catastrophe for Palestinians. My paternal grandparents originally lived in Haifa. In 1948, during the Nakba, they were among the 700,000 Palestinians forced to flee or expelled by Israel. Their home was demolished. They lost everything. Eventually, they made it back to the West Bank, but then in 1967, my father had to flee again. He became a refugee, unable to ever return to live in the country where he was born. He has, however, taken me back to visit. I went back to his village when I had just turned 6 and had a brief taste of what a Palestinian childhood is like, by which I mean Israeli soldiers shot tear gas at me and raided our village to burn the Palestinian flag. History did not start on the 7th of October, but as the world stops to mourn it, will forever be a reminder of whose lives matter. So I wanted to read that straight through in its entirety because it's a very powerful article. I didn't want to interrupt with my commentary. But, back when she says she had this corporate gig in October of last year, and after the attack happened, the internal Slack was filled with bloodlust for her people, and that she didn't speak out because she was afraid of losing her job. She was afraid of not only losing her job, but getting blacklisted to the point where she would not be able to support herself as a writer anymore. This is the kind of censorship that Israel and Israel supporters advocate for. Don't forget when Bill Ackman was on that run trying to get these college professors, fired from their jobs, really smearing these student protests. That's when a guy like RFK, who, puts himself out there as a big champion for free speech, he was retweeting Bill Ackman through that. So, like I said, I didn't want to interrupt the flow there, but that part stood out to me. I mean, the whole thing is emotionally very powerful.
Well,
but
that also...
because there's been a lot of ink spilled over how insecure Jewish students are made to feel on campus because of these protests. But there's been almost no ink spilled about stuff like that. Yeah.
Can you imagine if a bunch of Palestinians on an internal Slack channel started talking about how happy they were? Forget about it.
Right.
Forget about it. But it's perfectly acceptable for them to speak like that. It's disgusting. I'm already seeing Zionists. Tomorrow, do whatever you need to do for your health. If you need to rage.
That's what we need. More of their rage. That's what the world needs. We haven't had enough Israeli rage.
They're not expressing themselves enough.
Yeah.
Trigonometry has a video up right now, which I appreciate the honesty of, actually. They have some fucking disgusting psychopath on there talking about how, Israel wants this to be the last war. Well, on that, we are in agreement. They're saying the soft part out loud, but as a positive.
Right.
Yes, they're doing this to wipe out all opposition. That's why they won't stop. That's why they keep thwarting, aside from the fact that Netanyahu doesn't want to go to prison and his corruption prosecution has been suspended because of the war. Aside from that, this is the master plan. They're going for it. Greater Israel, baby.
Right. Yep. And so we thought we should end the show on that note. Very, 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 very well-written piece that is published in The Guardian. Encourage you to find that and share that. The title, so it'll make it easier to find in case you'd like to share this around. As a Palestinian living in the U.S., I've lost friends, job opportunities, and my faith in humanity.
Please clap.